Okay, good to see everybody. First of all, congrats to Bill Nelson, DeQuell Jackson for being named legends. Going to be exciting to celebrate those guys in person, along with Webster Slaughter and Josh Cribbs from last year. We weren't able to do that, so good to be in person with you all. First time in a while. Excited to have the fans back out here later in the week here at Cross Country Mortgage Campus. So ready to get to work. I know our guys are eager. Had a good walkthrough this morning, and then we'll get started this afternoon. And with that, I'll take any questions.
You start, Kevin, with everybody available health-wise?
Tony, we're going to be without Tony Fields. He injured his foot, the opposite the foot that he had an injury on before. So he'll miss some time. And then Dearness Johnson won't be out here, but he's excused for personal reasons. We'll see him later in the week.
Nobody on an injury list starting this season?
No.
Hey, Kevin, what's your team's vaccination rate?
I'm not going to get into specifics, Scott, but we're trending in the right direction. Just continue to educate everybody that we have a safe and effective vaccine. Want to keep our players safe, keep their families safe, the staff, etc. So that's what we're discussing with our guys.
You have to be careful to just no division between guys that feel strongly both ways.
Yes, and I think the guys know how I feel. I respect everybody's decision. It is a decision that they get to make. But we're just going to continue to do our part to educate. For guys that maybe want some more information, that's what we're here for.
Would you be comfortable providing like a threshold? I think you said in June it was above 50. Is it say above 75 at this point?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into specifics.
Do you seek those players out who may be hesitant, or is it just like my door's open, come talk to me?
I think we've, the medical staff has done an outstanding job of being there for our guys and answering any questions they may have and continue to have, and that's just what we're here for. Again, it's about player health and safety, and we're here and respectful of any decisions.
So Kevin, we asked you this before about your building on last year, but so like where do you start in training camp now compared to a year ago?
Back at the beginning. I think every year stands on its own merit, Jeff. So the guys understand that there's a ton of work to do, and we're starting on that path. We started with the rookies and the quarterbacks early, bringing them in for a few days, and then getting the vets here yesterday, starting the meetings last night. Meeting in person again. Haven't done that in a long time, so I think we're well on our way, but we have a long way to go.
What is your plan with Odell? He did some light stuff in minicamp. Now we're in training camp a little bit later. What's the plan?
Yeah, with Odell, very similar to a lot of guys, Jake. They have an individual plan that's tailored to them and where they are in their rehab, if you will. So we'll bring him along at the discretion of the doctors, our medical team, and Odell, and see how he's feeling. But had a good meeting with him last night. He's doing well.
What's the ramp up like this year? Is it 5 days before you can put on pads?
We're not in pads until we're day off on Sunday. We're in pads on Tuesday. So you can't be in pads on that first day off or after the first day off. You got to wait till Tuesday.
And that's the only ramp up restriction?
There's restrictions on what you can wear, how long you can go. So we'll adhere to all those rules, Tony, and just make sure that we do this safely.
When you gave your first speech to the team for training camp, did you talk about the Super Bowl expectations that are on the outside?
We talk about a lot of things. Scott, I promise you all 32 clubs talk about the Super Bowl. It's really easy to talk about it. It's hard to do. So we're just going to focus on the work.
Did you bring up the Kansas City loss, the playoff loss?
We've talked about a lot of things over time, but I'd say we're moving on to 2021.
Kevin, last year you guys learned what it took to get to be a playoff team in this league. What did you learn about what it's going to take for you guys to go further, to take that next step beyond just being a playoff?
Fumble. Sorry, one more time, Daryl.
Last year you learned what it took to make the playoffs in the NFL and be a playoff team. So what did you learn from that last year, and how do you apply it to this year to get even further, to go the next step?
Yeah, I think we certainly established an identity on offense, defense, and special teams. But I truly do go back that every year stands on its own merit. So just because you did it last year doesn't mean you're going to do it this year. So we're going to start back at square one as we install one with the offense and the defense. Installed punt this morning with Coach Preef. So we're going to make sure that we reinforce this foundation and not get too far ahead of ourselves, Darryl. But I would tell you that going into year 2, certainly we've established, we hope, a way of operating.
Have you ever been in a situation coaching-wise where you've ever had this many same players on offense? And I'm just wondering, what does that change for you as a coach?
Yeah, I can't think specifically. But yeah, continuity is great if you can do it. Oftentimes in this league, it's hard to do, so it doesn't guarantee anything either. So I've already talked to a bunch of our guys that I'm glad that we're bringing some faces back that we know, and there's the teaching maybe dives into nuance a little bit more with those guys, but you really have to start at the beginning and start at the foundation. And I think what you'll see today is it's about fundamentals and techniques, and that's where we'll start.
Kevin, was Tony Fields hurt during the on-field work the rookies and quarterbacks had?
He was.
And do you have feel for like if he needs surgery or is it going to be long-term?
I don't have a long-term update.
I know we were weeks away from preseason games, but you didn't have them last year. So in general, what's your philosophy on playtime for the regulars? And
Yeah.
how will it change your camp this year compared to last year?
Yeah, I think, Tony, we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. We've had conversations about it, but I want to see where the team is. I want to see where we are when we approach those games, and then we'll make decisions really player by player. You also have to be mindful of the extra game this season. So there's a lot of things that we're taking into account as we start practicing, as we build this practice schedule out.
Kevin, when we talk about the continuity a lot, but it also means in that your opponents probably know more about you than they did a year ago. So how do you take that into account when you're trying to tweak the offense or whatever?
Yeah, there's a bunch of tape on us last year on offense, defense, and special teams. So that's where teams, when they're playing us, especially early, that's where they'll start. That's where we're starting. So it's very natural in this game to evolve your schemes in a given season, over a given season. So, Jeff, we had a lot of those conversations this spring. We implemented a bunch of those changes in the off season into mini camp, and then we'll constantly try to grow. I don't believe that you can stay stagnant in this league because, from an offensive coach's perspective, there's too many good defensive coaches out there. If you keep doing the same thing, they'll take it away.
We got a chance to talk to Miles, and he said he feels like with so many new faces on D, especially, his leadership's more important than ever. How important do you think it is, and how, I don't know, refreshing is it, or whatever the word you would use to describe hearing a key player really kind of take more on his shoulders that way?
Yeah, Miles been doing that since I got here. Really, he's never shy to share how he feels with his teammates. He works his butt off, and the guys see that. He practices really hard, so he's a leader of this football team. And I think with that defense, like he mentioned, with some new faces, he's needed. We need his leadership, and he knows that. And I think that's also part of the maturation of a player and of a person as Miles, continues to stack some seasons on top of each other. He's grown into that role, is what I would tell you.
How different is the vibe compared to this time last year? I mean, you were just meeting guys for the first time. Guys were just meeting some of the coaches, and now you're coming off a breakout season. These guys enjoyed success together. So, what is the vibe like now compared to this time a year ago?
Yeah, I'm not very good at measuring vibes, Jake. I think the guys are excited. I think they're excited to be back around each other. We're excited to get to work. There's a lot of energy out here at walkthroughs, so I think that'll probably carry over into practice.
Going back to the 17-game schedule, has that caused you to totally rewrite and rethink how you conduct training camp?
I wouldn't say totally, Tony, but you have to take it into account. And then it's not just for training camp. It really builds into how you proceed throughout the regular season, keeping that in mind.
How tough is it for Jeremiah not to be out here for the start of camp? And are you guys able to keep him in the loop through, virtual meetings?
We are, and we've had a lot of practice at those virtual meetings. So Coach Tarver, Coach Bloom, they're doing an outstanding job of making sure he's up to speed and getting as much as he can while he's not here.
I would imagine it's tough for a rookie to miss those, first however many practices.
Yeah, I'd say not ideal. Obviously, I'm sure he wants to be out here, and we want him out here, but that's the nature of this thing, and we'll just bring him along as quickly as we can while he's not here.
Can you say whether he's out for 10 days?
I can't.
Coach,
Kevin,
with all the changes on, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks.
all the changes on defense, do you have to accept a little bit that this is going to take a minute for that group to mesh?
Yeah, I think our coaches understand that we're introducing some new guys in the scheme. Now we have a bunch of guys that are returning as well. So it's not like you're starting with an entire defensive new scheme like we were last year, like we were on offense and defense. So I think the guys have a plan. I think it really speaks to how you plan your practices, how you do your installs, how you make sure you don't go too fast, too quickly. And I think Joe and the staff are on top of that.
So I wanted to ask you about Joe Woods. I mean, what stood out to you about him last year as he was going through that season? And I mean, where does the confidence come from that he can kind of turn this defense around?
Yeah, Joe's a really good football coach. I believe in that staff. I think they did a nice job last season in some tough spots. So they've worked really hard this offseason, fine-tuning the scheme. As we mentioned, we're adding some new players in there, so I think Joe's as excited as anybody to get out here.
Did you learn anything new about him, kind of working so closely with him every day?
You know, having spent time with Joe years ago, he's a grinder. He stays in this office. He's in early, stays late. That light's always on in there, and he's working at it. So something I knew, but having an office right next to him, maybe I got a front row seat at it.
He wasn't the first assistant coach you announced because he was at the Super Bowl. But was he the first one in your mind that you selected from your history?
Yes.
Jarvis said earlier that last year was his toughest physically and mentally of all his seasons. Are you looking forward to seeing him? He's leaner, he's healthier, kind of getting back to old Jarvis?
Yeah, Marla, I'm really impressed at how Jarvis looks. I mean, physically, he's in great shape. He really worked very hard this offseason, and he's ready to roll. He's consummate professional. Thrilled that he's in that meeting room with some young guys, and they can kind of see how a pro does it. So yeah, I think he's in a good place.
Last year's circumstances somewhat dictated how you had to run training camp. So this year, with some of the protocols being relaxed, you can do more a lot sooner. How much different can we expect, especially the early part of this training camp, to look as compared to what you were able to do last year?
It'll be louder with the fans out here, which I'm excited to. I've heard all about it, so I'm excited to experience. Yeah, I think we'll be mindful, Daryl, of as we go, that we do this the right way. What we won't do is do too much too soon. I don't believe in that. So there's a way to start, and it may look slow to some people, but we're trying to reinforce the foundation because we got a lot of work to do, and we can't skip steps to get ahead.
Kevin, you were part of some teams in Minnesota that were really good and then never quite got to great. Is it tougher to take that step when you have an established team to go from, borderline playoffs or playoffs to Super Bowl contender?
Yeah, Tom, I just think this league is really competitive. There's some great teams. There's great coaches. So year in and year out, it's hard, and we get that. So that's where our guys are up for the challenge. We're not going to think too much or think too far ahead of ourselves, but totally recognize that this league is it's difficult, and you'll get reminded every once in a while how difficult it is. But the guys understand this is a long season, and part of getting ready for that long season is putting some really good work in early as we get started.
Last year at camp, you were forced because of protocols to do some things non-traditionally. Did you learn that have you carried over any that you said, hey, that was a great idea, we ought to just do it that way anyway? Is there anything that came out of that?
I think, yes, Tony, we certainly learned a lot. I'd say a great example is what we're doing right now with JOK not being here. I think we can not lose too much not having him in person. And again, I think that's a credit to Coach Tarver, Coach Bloom, that staff. They're being very creative in how they can get him some walkthrough reps and make sure that he's staying up to speed. So those are the type of things that you learned last year that you can maybe apply to this year.
You had to relax. I don't know. You still had a lot of padded practices, but it was kind of untraditional, the hitting involved in camp last year. Did that turn out to be a good idea in your mind?
I don't know how different it was last year, the hitting. I mean, we're going to adhere to the protocols in terms of how many padded practices you can get and that type of thing. So we'll make sure that we do it in a safe way, that we ramp this thing up. But as you know, it's football, so once the pads get on, it will look more like football, and guys will, I'm certainly, I believe, be flying around.
do you keep an eye on those rookies at this stage of training camp and watch out for like burnout or head swimming, things like that?
Yeah, Andrew, I think it's great that those guys were in here for those 3 days. I think they got to knock off some rust mentally and physically. But for a young player, this is a lot. It's a long day. And you get in and you're lifting and you're going to meetings and then you're going to walk through, you're getting lunch, you're going back out to walk through, you're going to another meeting, you're coming out here, you got meetings afterwards. So it's a lot. And you make sure that those guys understand that's part of being a pro, being able to operate with all of that going on. So we'll just make sure that they're where they're supposed to be and they're taking coaching. And I think you'll see, as we all do, you'll see growth with them over time.
Greg Newsom said he's comfortable inside and out. And I know Joe, when we talked to Dan at minicamp, said he's working him inside. How important is it to have that flexibility, as your defensive coordinator?
Versatility is a big thing, and if he shows that he can play inside and out, that allows certainly Joe and the defensive staff to use him as such. But I'd tell you about a bunch of players. Troy Hill's somebody that can play inside and out. So I think when you have multiple guys that can do multiple roles, it just opens up the amount of things that you can do as a defense. So certainly that's a big deal.
Kevin, you said, I'm out of practice, but we're going to go about 2 more, and then we're going to wrap. Kevin, you said that everybody talks about the Super Bowl, at the start of the season. Last year, you guys probably didn't have a target on your back. This year, you do. Do you like that feeling going into training camp and the season, knowing that you're one of those teams that everybody will kind of have a bullseye on?
Yeah, we really, with all due respect, ignore what's going on the outside. I'm really concerned with what's going on and with the guys inside the building. So we'll just keep our focus on what we have to do and the work that we have to put into this, and anything else that's going on the outside, I'll let you guys worry about that.
Still doing the 4 H's?
Yeah, got a plan to do that, yes.